Hey, what's up? This is TJ. Thanks for joining me. We're out of the studio today in my basement here. Why? Because I wanted to show you that I've set up here my live rig and I've added a couple things to it. And one of these things I wanted to show you in particular, that's this powerful little box right here. This is the CME H4MIDI WC. A big name for a super powerful little MIDI tool that can help you in your studio, as well as for me, helping me in my live rig. So we're going to check this out today. I'll show you all the features and the software that comes with it. Let's get started. The H4MIDI WC is a really small device, as you can see, and let's check out what the input and output is for it. You have two MIDI outputs, DIN MIDI outputs, 5-pinners, and you have two MIDI inputs. I should also mention that they also make these really nice low-profile MIDI cables. They don't come with it, they're optional, but I do like those. It has a USB-A port, okay, and that will power the connected device, okay, as long as this 9-volt adapter is plugged in. That does not come with it. That's an adapter of my own. It is center negative 9-volt. There's a USB port. This is for plugging it into your computer. There's a little preset button down here. It's inset, and it can hold 4 different configuration presets. It has WC. What is WC? Well, that means that it can have also an optional Bluetooth MIDI chip that you can install in there. I don't have that for my needs, but you can install one in there and you can use Bluetooth MIDI as well. One of the other things you can also do with the USB-A port is you can put a hub on there, and you can have up to 8 additional ports plugged into that, so you can have 8 USB devices plugged into the CME box here for additional expansion. So really a lot of stuff that you can do. Okay, so what am I using this for and why did I get it? Well, I needed a way to integrate my new pimped out guitar into my live rig. Outside of being, a YouTuber, I do play in a live band. It's sort of an 80s inspired original band, and you gotta have a guitar for that kind of band. So I thought it'd be fun to add that, but I had some technical challenges that I needed to overcome in order to do that. Obviously I have here the Nord Lead A1 in my rig, and I have a Roland Phantom here in my rig. Right? Well, the Phantom is set up so when I change sounds, it changes the sounds in the lead one too, to correspond for the songs that I want to play and the sounds that go with them. All right, so I needed to make sure that that was stuck together, okay? And then I also needed a way to power via USB my guitar. All right, so I needed to do that, and I needed to be able to send the data from the guitar, the MIDI, to both the lead one as well as to the Phantom, so I can play both of them. And this little box here has allowed me to do that because I can plug in the guitar to the USB-A port and it will power the guitar. Right? This is just a controller. It doesn't have any sounds on its own. And then I can map that to send this out to both the lead one and to the Phantom. Okay? So what I've done with the guitar is I have these 2 little buttons here. You can't see them pretty well, but one button is set up so it sends out MIDI data on channel 1, and the other button sends out MIDI on channel 8, which is what the lead 1 is set up for. So I can have both sounds going on at the same time. If I want to hear the Roland here, all right, I have that button lit up. Then if I want to switch to playing the lead A1 from the Nord, I can do that. So now what it does is it takes the USB port and then it sends it out to both, And then I just need to select which device, which keyboard sounds that I want it to come out with. All right, I'm back here in the studio. Got this cute little box here, the CME H4MIDI WC. Now, I'm going to plug just the USB-C port in here, and this is plugged into my computer on the other end. And you'll see that it can power from that. If you just want to use this by itself, you can power it through the USB, say through your computer or something like that. If you want to plug in other devices into the USB-A port, depending on the power usage, it may be able to use just this USB, but I've kind of found that you're probably going to want to get more with the DC power, particularly if you want to add a hub to this. If you remember, I mentioned before that you can actually add an additional 8 ports to this with a USB hub plugged into here. But you're going to have to power all that stuff, so you're probably going to want to get the DC power supply. That is not included, I mentioned to you before. But it is a pretty common type, that being 9 volts center negative. Okay, that said, let's take a look at the software.
Companion software that is free for download, the HxMIDI tools. Let me pull that up and you'll see right away it checks for firmware. Did that really quick. And then it'll find whatever is connected to it. And I'm going to make this nicely bigger so we don't have to do a lot of scrolling. The resizing on this is very good. All right. So you have all these input ports, and then you have all of the output ports. Now, if you remember, I'm just connected to the USB port so we can look at the software. So not everything is connected, but I can show you what is available. You have 4 USB virtual ports, and then you have a Bluetooth in that if you do have the optional Bluetooth expander, you can see that come up. Then you have the MIDI ports, the MIDI 1 and the MIDI 2, and you're able to rename those if you like. I renamed that for my Phantom. And then here is all of the USB-A ports that are available. If I have my guitar plugged in, it would show up here, and that would say Lisa's Vortex, which is the guitar model. And then you have all these other ports that are available. So if you wanted to plug in a USB hub into the USB host port 1, those would all show up here as well. Then you can connect those all to the output. Again, there's the virtual outputs. There's the Bluetooth output, right? The MIDI outputs. Again, I was able to rename those. And then these are the host outputs. So you can also use that hub for outputs, and then you can route it for whatever way that you want. All right. Now, just quickly here, looking at my DAW into Logic, you can see down here at the bottom all of those USB-C ports, they come up. And if the USB-A ports were there, stuff plugged into that, that would also come up here as well, along with all the other stuff I got plugged in. All right, so let's go back to the software. And let me show you the other things that are available. You have a MIDI filter, okay? You can filter out channels, messages, common stuff such as timecode, and real-time type stuff, such as an important one is active sensing. If your device sends active sensing, that can kind of clog up the MIDI stream, clog up the data rate, so you might want to get rid of that. You have to select one of the ports for this. So let's say the host 1 to activate it. Then you would select what channel that you may want to filter out, okay, or any one of these things. Say I want to filter out the active sensing, I would just click that there. Okay, if I wanted to filter out anything else, program changes, that's also something pretty common. You may want to filter out, that's available as well. All right, let's go to the MIDI mapper. This is a really powerful tool as well. You can select all kinds of different things here. This is just really quick. I want to go through with this. Say, for example, you want to change a control change commands to aftertouch, say, for example. Those are the messages. If you want to change the MIDI input channels to a certain other channel, you can select a range of channels or you can select one. Let's just say, for example, I only want from channel 1 to channel 1, so that's one channel. Okay, I want to change that, so I want to transpose the channel to say plus a channel, so it'll come out to channel 2. Okay, for example, I can change the type of messages. Say, for example, I can scale this. I can give it a range. Say I want all these pressure changes to start at, say, 10 rather than at 0. I can do that. Okay, all kinds of different things that you can do in the MIDI mapper. Next, we have the firmware. You can load the firmware in here, and then these are the settings. And you pretty much don't necessarily need to know much here other than this little box here. Okay, this will allow you, as it shows, if you want the current preset changed from an incoming MIDI message. So you can actually set this to change remotely. So that's really cool. And then there's other little things. Let's say, again, there's a little button on the side that can change the presets, or you can use that button to send an all notes off, a panic button per se.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons. First, the small size is awesome. It lets me put it right on the top of my keyboard. I had a little bit of Velcro that I added to the bottom. Fits on there. It's almost like just an extension of my keyboard rig. So this is really, really great. And all the extra ports that it can give you for your computer system or other types of hookup are really awesome. With the extension that you can use, the USB-A port and the MIDI ports, the routing that you can do, the filtering, the MIDI mapping that you can do, all really, really awesome stuff. Plus, it comes in at a very low price. It's just under $70. So that's really, really awesome as well. Plus, you can get their Bluetooth expander. Pretty easy to install. There's instructions on the website. That's also available for only about $30. So that's really, really cool. Also, the software that you had saw, it was being run obviously on my Mac, but it's also available on Windows. It's available for iPads, iOS, for your phone, iPhone, and it's also available for Android. So that's really, really amazing compatibility for whatever type of system that you use. I mean, the only cons that I can really see with this is you do need the software in order to configure it. Obviously, there's no buttons or anything like that to do that. So that may or may not be a problem in the future. These softwares tend to become outdated after a while once companies update their operating systems. So if the company is no longer existing or they don't keep it up to date, all of a sudden your device becomes obsolete. The only other con I can really mention is it doesn't really come with, obviously, the DC power supply, so that is going to cost you more money if you're going to need that. That's a positive and a negative in some ways. I know a lot of people, guitarists, would really like this type of device, that they use a MIDI type of pedal board, and they can use that, plug that into their power supply that's on their pedal board. So that's a good reason for it not necessarily to be there. If you already have a power supply like I do, you don't necessarily need to spend the extra money for that. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for checking out TJ on the Road, the YouTube channel, my website, tjontheroad.com. Thank you again for your support. I'll see you next time.